Imagine stepping off a long international flight after spending hours in the air. You are tired, excited, and ready to begin your trip in the United States. Maybe you are coming to visit family. Maybe you are arriving for business, school, or tourism. You gather your bags, follow the signs to immigration, and join the line leading to the inspection booths operated by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Everything seems routine. Then in less than 60 seconds, a simple answer to a simple question changes everything. Instead of hearing the words, "Welcome to the United States," you hear something very different. An officer asks you to step aside. Another officer escorts you to a separate room. Minutes turn into hours. Your luggage is searched. Additional questions begin. Your connecting flight is missed. Your stress level rises, and all because of a few words that sounded completely harmless when you said them. Today, we are going to discuss one of the most misunderstood parts of entering the United States, secondary inspection, and the 3 common phrases that can dramatically increase your chances of being referred for additional questioning. If you travel internationally, hold a visa, possess a green card, or plan to visit the United States in the future, this information could save you from unnecessary delays, confusion, and anxiety at the airport. Before we discuss the specific phrases, it is important to understand how the entry process works. Every traveler entering the United States goes through inspection conducted by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, commonly known as CBP. Many travelers mistakenly believe that the officers they encounter at the airport are TSA agents, but that is not the case. The Transportation Security Administration focuses primarily on aviation security and airport checkpoints before departure. CBP officers have a completely different responsibility. Their job is to determine whether travelers are admissible to the United States and whether their stated purpose of travel matches their immigration status and documentation. These officers operate under broad legal authority granted by federal law. They can ask questions, inspect documents, review travel histories, and refer travelers to secondary inspection whenever they believe additional examination is necessary. For most people, primary inspection is quick and uneventful. An officer reviews a passport, asks a few questions, confirms travel details, and allows the traveler to proceed. The entire process often takes only a few minutes. However, secondary inspection is very different. Secondary inspection involves additional questioning in a separate area. Travelers may wait for extended periods while officers review records, verify information, or conduct further interviews. Depending on the circumstances, officers may examine luggage, electronic devices, travel records, financial information, or documentation supporting the purpose of the visit. While secondary inspection does not automatically mean that someone has done something wrong, it is unquestionably a stressful experience that most travelers would prefer to avoid. One reason secondary inspection occurs so frequently is because CBP officers are trained to identify inconsistencies, uncertainty, and gaps in information. Their job is not simply to process travelers quickly. Their job is to evaluate credibility. Every answer you provide contributes to a larger picture in the officer's mind. If your responses are clear, consistent, and supported by your documentation, the process generally moves smoothly. But if your answers raise questions, even unintentionally, officers may decide that additional scrutiny is necessary. This is where many travelers get into trouble without realizing it. The first phrase that often creates problems is surprisingly simple. It is the phrase, "I don't know." At first glance, this answer seems harmless. After all, everyone forgets details from time to time. International travel can be stressful. Many travelers are nervous, tired, or jet-lagged. Yet from the perspective of an immigration officer, "I don't know" can be a major warning sign depending on the question being asked. Imagine an officer asks how long you plan to stay in the United States. You respond, "I don't know." The officer then asks where you will be staying. Again, you answer, "I don't know." Perhaps the officer asks what you plan to do during your visit, and once again the answer is, "I'm not sure." Within seconds, the officer begins to wonder how someone could have planned an international trip without knowing these basic details. The issue is not necessarily that you lack information. The issue is perception. Immigration officers are trained to identify possible signs of deception, unauthorized employment, visa misuse, or undocumented travel plans. When a traveler appears uncertain about fundamental aspects of their trip, officers may question whether the stated purpose of travel is genuine. They may wonder whether the traveler is concealing information, has received inaccurate instructions from someone else, or intends to engage in activities inconsistent with their visa classification. In many cases, the traveler is completely innocent and simply nervous. Unfortunately, officers cannot read minds. They can only evaluate the answers they receive. Consider a traveler arriving on a tourist visa. The officer asks how long the traveler plans to stay. The traveler says, "I don't know, maybe a few weeks." The officer asks where the traveler will stay. The traveler responds, "I'm not sure yet." These answers immediately create uncertainty. Compare that to a prepared traveler who says, "I'll be staying for 3 weeks. My return flight is on July 15. I'll be staying with my cousin in Dallas." The second response is clear, direct, and credible. It gives the officer confidence that the traveler understands their own plans and can support those plans with documentation if necessary. The second phrase that often causes unnecessary scrutiny is just visiting. This answer sounds perfectly reasonable because many people genuinely are visiting. The problem is that the phrase is extremely vague. Officers hear it countless times every day. When someone says they are just visiting, it provides almost no meaningful information. Visiting whom, staying where, for how long, doing what activities, returning when. These details matter because immigration officers must determine whether the traveler's plans are consistent with their immigration status and stated purpose of entry. Many travelers assume that shorter answers are always better. In reality, officers are looking for concise but complete responses. A vague answer can create more questions than it resolves. Imagine an officer asks why you are traveling to the United States. You reply, just visiting. The officer now needs additional information. Are you visiting family, friends? Tourist attractions? Attending an event? Participating in business meetings? The conversation expands because the original answer lacked necessary detail. In contrast, a stronger response might be, I'm visiting my sister in Chicago for 2 weeks and returning home on June 20. That answer immediately addresses several questions at once and demonstrates confidence and preparation. The third phrase that frequently creates problems is, whatever you need. Many people say this because they want to appear cooperative and respectful. Their intentions are good. However, immigration officers are trained to evaluate behavior as well as words. When someone responds with whatever you need instead of answering a direct question, it can create ambiguity. Officers may interpret the response as excessive nervousness, uncertainty, or an attempt to avoid providing a specific answer. What officers generally want is not unlimited cooperation in the abstract. They want accurate information. Clear communication is often more valuable than broad declarations of willingness to cooperate. Imagine an officer asks a student arriving on an F1 visa what they will be studying. Instead of answering directly, the student says, whatever the university needs me to take. While intended as a cooperative response, it fails to answer the question. The officer may wonder whether the student actually knows the details of their academic program. A much stronger answer would be, I'll be studying computer science at the University of Michigan. My program begins in August. This response demonstrates familiarity with the educational plans that justified the issuance of the visa in the first place. Now that we have discussed the three phrases, let's talk about what successful travelers do differently. The most important factor is preparation. Before traveling, take a few minutes to review the basic details of your trip. Know where you are staying, know how long you plan to remain in the United States, know your return date, know the purpose of your visit. If you are attending a conference, know the conference name. If you are studying, know your school and academic program. If you are visiting family, know the address where you will stay. These details may seem obvious, but many travelers never review them before arriving at the airport. Organization also matters. Have your passport readily accessible. Keep important supporting documents available if needed. Students should have their relevant educational documents available. Business travelers should know the details of meetings or events they plan to attend. Visitors staying with family should have contact information and addresses readily available. Being organized creates a positive impression and reduces stress during the inspection process. Another important principle is answering questions directly. Many travelers make the mistake of providing either too little information or too much information. The goal is balance. Listen carefully to the question being asked and provide a concise, truthful response. If the officer asks how long you will stay, answer that question specifically. If additional details are needed, the officer will ask for them. Avoid guessing. Avoid speculating. If you genuinely do not understand a question, politely ask the officer to repeat or clarify it. Seeking clarification is far better than providing an inaccurate answer. It is also important to understand that different categories of travelers have different legal situations at the port of entry. U.S. citizens generally possess the strongest legal protections. Lawful permanent residents, commonly known as green card holders, have significant rights but may still face questioning under certain circumstances. Temporary visa holders often face the greatest level of scrutiny because they must demonstrate that their activities are consistent with the purpose of their visa category. Understanding your own immigration status and responsibilities is essential before traveling. Technology and security procedures continue to evolve. Modern entry systems incorporate extensive databases, biometric verification, travel history analysis, and information sharing between government agencies. Officers frequently have access to more information than travelers realize. This is one reason consistency matters so much. If the information in your documents, travel records, and answers aligns, the process is usually straightforward. If inconsistencies emerge, even minor ones, officers may choose to investigate further. The reality is that most travelers enter the United States without any problems at all. Every day, millions of people successfully pass through airports and border crossings because they arrive prepared, answer questions honestly, and understand the purpose of the inspection process. Secondary inspection is not inevitable. In many cases, it can be avoided simply by communicating clearly and confidently. The three phrases we discussed today, "I don't know, just visiting," and "whatever you need," are not illegal. They are not guaranteed tickets to secondary inspection. But they often create ambiguity, uncertainty, and additional questions. In an environment where officers are trained to evaluate credibility, ambiguity is rarely your friend. The next time you prepare for an international trip to the United States, remember that a few minutes of preparation can save hours of stress. Know your travel plans, understand your immigration status, keep your documents organized, answer questions clearly and honestly. Most importantly, remember that confidence comes from preparation. When you know your own story and can explain it clearly, you place yourself in the best possible position for a smooth and efficient entry experience. International travel should be exciting, not frightening. By understanding how the inspection process works and avoiding common communication mistakes, you can travel with greater confidence, reduce unnecessary complications, and focus on enjoying your journey rather than worrying about what might happen at the immigration checkpoint.